Captain Elena Rodriguez stared at the star charts floating above her command table. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Confederation for almost 200 years. But looking at these maps always made her feel uneasy. The galaxy was divided into colored zones that told a story she didn't like. Green zones belonged to the pure races, species like the crystal beings who lived forever, or the mind readers who could speak without words. These races controlled the best planets, the richest trade routes, and all the important decisions in the galaxy. Yellow zones were for standard races, beings who were good enough to trade with the pure races but not good enough to rule. Humans fell into this group along with dozens of other species who had the right kind of technology and behavior, but the red zones made Elena's stomach turn. These were the contaminated sectors where the galaxy dumped the species it didn't want. The Confederation called them evolutionary mistakes or dangerous elements. Elena called it something else entirely. Her thoughts were broken by a sharp beep from the communications console. Lieutenant Parks, her communications officer, looked up with confusion on his face. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal." "It's strange." "How strange?" Elena asked, walking over to his station. "The signal is using old emergency codes, but it's coming from the neutral zone between sectors 7 and 8. That's empty space, Captain. Nothing should be out there." Elena studied the readout. The signal was weak but clear. Someone was in trouble in the middle of nowhere. "Can you clean up the message?" Parks worked his controls for a moment. Static filled the bridge, then cleared to reveal a voice speaking in broken galactic standard. "This is transport vessel Hope's End. We have been attacked. Life support failing. 47 souls aboard, please. Someone help us." The message repeated, getting weaker each time. Elena felt her crew looking at her. They all knew the rules. Ships weren't supposed to be in the neutral zone. If someone was out there, they probably weren't supposed to be. "Captain," said Dr. James Chen, the ship's science officer, "according to the regulations, we should report this to Confederation Command and wait for instructions." Elena looked at the star chart again. The nearest Confederation patrol would take at least 6 hours to reach that position. The distress signal suggested these people had maybe 2 hours of life support left. "Plot a course for the signal's origin," she ordered. "Captain." Parks looked surprised. "You heard me. Best possible speed." Her bridge crew exchanged glances but followed orders. Elena had a reputation for bending rules when lives were at stake. It was why her crew trusted her, even when she made decisions that might get them all in trouble. The Bridges was a good ship, an exploration vessel designed for long-range missions and first-contact situations. Elena had requested this assignment specifically because it kept her away from the political games in the core worlds. Out here, she could focus on what mattered: discovery, understanding, and helping people when they needed it. 2 hours later, they found the Hope's End. The ship was barely holding together. It looked like it had been built from parts of a dozen different vessels, welded together by someone who cared more about function than appearance. Hull breaches had been sealed with emergency patches. The engines were dark. "Life signs?" Elena asked. Dr. Chen studied his scanners. 43 now. Weak but stable. "Captain, the damage pattern. This wasn't an accident. Someone shot this ship." Elena felt anger building in her chest. "With what kind of weapons?" "Confederation plasma cannons. Recent damage, maybe 4 hours old." The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. Confederation forces had attacked this ship and left the survivors to die in space. She opened a channel to the damaged vessel. "Hope's End, this is Captain Rodriguez of the Earthship Bridges. We're here to help. Can you hear me?" The response came quickly, filled with relief and disbelief. "Earthship, you came for us?" "Yes, we're preparing to dock and take you aboard." "How many injured?" 12 seriously. "But Captain, you should know. We are not like you. We are the ones your Confederation calls contaminated. If you help us, they will mark you as contaminated too." Elena looked around her bridge. Her crew was listening to every word. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. Lieutenant Parks checked his instruments and confirmed the docking approach. Engineer Santos looked up from her console and said quietly, "Captain, we've got plenty of room." "Hope's End, this is Captain Rodriguez. I don't care what the Confederation calls you. Your people in trouble, and that's all that matters to me. Prepare for docking." The docking process took 30 minutes. Elena's team worked carefully to match the damaged ship's awkward rotation. and connect their airlocks safely. When the seals confirmed, Dr. Chen took his medical team across immediately. Elena waited on the bridge until Chen's voice came through her communicator. "Captain, you need to see this." She made her way through the connecting tube and into the Hope's End. The smell hit her first, a mixture of recycled air, fear, and something else she couldn't identify. Then she saw the survivors. They weren't human, but Elena had seen many alien species during her years in space. What shocked her wasn't their appearance, it was their condition. These people had been living in terrible conditions for a long time. Their clothes were patched and repatched. They looked hungry and scared. But what struck Elena most was how they looked at her crew. The aliens watched the humans with amazement, as if they couldn't believe anyone had come to help them. Dr. Chen approached with a young alien whose skin seemed to shift colors as Elena watched. "Captain, this is Zix. They speak good standard and they've been explaining their situation." Zix's skin shifted to a deep blue color, and Elena sensed sadness from them somehow. "Captain Rodriguez, I must tell you what we are so you understand the danger you have accepted." Elena knelt to bring herself to Zix's eye level. "Tell me, I am Zephyrian. I people feel emotions very strongly, and others can sense our feelings. The Confederation says this makes us unstable and dangerous. They moved us to the contaminated sectors 50 years ago." Zix gestured to other survivors. "These are Korthak, who think together as one mind, but the Confederation says this is primitive. Those are Veil beings who exist partially in another dimension. But the Confederation says they are unreliable because they cannot always hold physical form. And there are Narathi, who have many children quickly, but the Confederation calls them vermin." Elena felt sick. These weren't dangerous criminals or violent beings. They were just different from what the galaxy considered normal. "What happened to your ship?" she asked. Zix's skin color shifted to angry red. "We were traveling to the Outer Rim to start a new colony, away from the Confederation worlds. Peacekeepers stopped us at the border. They said our travel permits were invalid, even though we had paid for them legally. When we protested, they disabled our ship and left us to die." "They just left you?" "The commander said it was better than taking us to a containment facility. He said the galaxy would be cleaner this way." Elena stood up slowly, her hands clenched into fists. She had always known the Confederation had problems, but this was genocide disguised as policy. "Dr. Chen, what's the status on medical treatment?" "The injured will be fine, Captain. Mostly malnutrition and exposure. Nothing we can't handle." Elena looked around at the survivors. 43 beings who had been condemned to die simply because they were different. "All right, everyone. We're taking you aboard the bridges. You'll be safe there." Zix's skin shifted through several colors rapidly. "Captain, you don't understand. If the Confederation learns you helped us, they will declare your ship contaminated. You will lose your rank, your crew will lose their careers, and your ship will be impounded." Elena smiled grimly. "Let me worry about the Confederation. Right now I'm more concerned about getting you somewhere safe." As her crew began helping the survivors move to the bridges, Elena made a decision that would change everything. She opened a secure channel to Confederation Command. "Command, this is Captain Rodriguez reporting a rescue operation. We found 43 survivors of a ship that suffered catastrophic system failure in the neutral zone." The response came back quickly. "Captain Rodriguez, identify the survivors' species and prepare for immediate transfer to Confederation authorities." Elena looked at Zix, who was helping an injured Korthak individual walk to the airlock. "Command, the survivors are under my protection as rescued persons according to Galactic rescue protocols. I'm taking them to the nearest safe harbor. Captain, you will identify the species immediately. That is a direct order." Elena closed the channel without responding. Lieutenant Parks looked at her with wide eyes. "Captain, they're going to send ships after us." "I know." Elena watched the last of the survivors cross into her ship. "Set course for the Sol system. Best possible speed." "Sol system, Captain. It's time humanity remembered what we stand for." As the bridges jumped to faster-than-light speed, Elena knew she had just started something that would echo across the galaxy. But looking at the grateful faces of the people they had saved, she knew it was the right thing to do. Behind them, the wreckage of the Hope's End drifted silently in space, evidence of what happened when the galaxy decided some lives were worth less than others. Ahead of them lay Earth, and Elena hoped that The medical bay of the bridges had never been so busy. Dr. James Chen moved between patients with practiced efficiency, but his scientific mind was racing with excitement. In 30 years of studying alien biology, he had never seen anything like the beings they had rescued. Zix sat on one of the medical beds, their skin slowly shifting from the worried purple it had been to a calmer green. Dr. Chen was taking readings with his medical scanner when he noticed something remarkable. "Zix, can you feel what I'm feeling right now?" The young Zephyrian tilted their head, skin shifting to a thoughtful blue. "You are curious, excited? You find us interesting, not frightening." "That's exactly right." Dr. Chen made notes on his tablet. "Your empathic abilities are incredible. Have you ever considered that this might be a gift rather than a flaw?" Zix's skin flashed through several colors before settling on a confused yellow. "Gift? The Confederation says our emotional intensity makes us unstable. They say we cannot control ourselves and that we make others uncomfortable." "Well, I'm a doctor," Chen said gently, "and I'm thinking that if I could feel my patients' pain and emotions directly, I could help them much better." "That doesn't sound like a flaw to me." In the corner of the medical bay, Engineer Rosa Santos was working with a Korthak individual who had introduced himself as Collective Node 7. Rosa had brought him here because he had been injured in the attack, but she was discovering something fascinating. "So you can really think together with other Korthak?" she asked while bandaging a cut on his arm. Collective Node 7 spoke in a voice that seemed to echo slightly, as if multiple people were talking at once. "We were collective. Now we are severed from the whole. It is difficult to describe. Like suddenly being blind or deaf. But you're still thinking clearly. You're still yourself?" "Yes, but also no. We were part of something larger. Now we are just individual. The Confederation told us this was better, more civilized. They said our collective thinking was primitive, like insects." Rosa frowned as she worked. "That's ridiculous. Do you know what I could accomplish if I could share technical knowledge directly with my engineering team? We could solve problems in minutes instead of hours." For the first time since the rescue, Collective Node 7 seemed surprised. "You would want to think together?" "Are you kidding? Half the problems in space exploration come from communication failures between specialists. If we could share knowledge the way you do..." Rosa shook her head in amazement. "The Confederation doesn't know what they're talking about." On the other side of the medical bay, Captain Elena Rodriguez was trying to have a conversation with Whisper of Stars, one of the Veil beings. It was challenging because Whisper of Stars kept flickering in and out of full visibility. "I apologize, Captain," Whisper of Stars said, their voice seeming to come from several directions at once. "We cannot always maintain complete existence in your dimension. The Confederation finds this unreliable." Elena studied the shifting, translucent figure with fascination rather than frustration. "Can you see into other dimensions?" "We exist partially in what you call subspace. We can sense the flows of energy that your ships use for faster-than-light travel. We can sometimes see where space is thin between dimensions." Elena's tactical mind immediately grasped the implications. You could help ships navigate more safely. You could detect spatial anomalies before they become dangerous. Whisper of Stars flickered into clearer focus, seeming surprised. "You do not find our partial existence disturbing?" "I find it amazing. Do you know how many ships we've lost to subspace accidents? How many explorers have died because they hit unexpected dimensional barriers?" Elena shook her head. "Your people could save thousands of lives." In the ship's largest cargo bay, which had been converted into temporary housing, Broodmother Kess was watching her few remaining children play. The Narathi looked somewhat like large, intelligent otters, but with 6 limbs and expressive eyes that showed deep intelligence. Dr. Chen approached carefully. The ship's records indicated that Narathi were considered dangerous because of their rapid reproduction rate, but watching the family group, he saw only normal parental care and love. "Broodmother Kess, how are your children doing?" The adult Narathi looked up with eyes full of grief. "These are all that remain of my brood. 17 children were killed when the peacekeepers fired on our ship. The Confederation says we breed too quickly, that we would overrun the galaxy if left unchecked." Chen knelt down to watch the young Narathi playing. They were clearly intelligent, solving puzzles and communicating with complex gestures. "How quickly do your people mature?" "Our children reach adult intelligence in 2 years, physical maturity in 4. We can have a new brood every 3 years if food is plentiful. And how long do you live? About 40 years if we are healthy and safe. Chen did quick calculations in his head. So your species adapts quickly to new environments and can establish stable populations rapidly. The Confederation calls this a plague characteristic. I call it perfect for colonizing dangerous or difficult worlds, Chen said firmly. Your people could establish human colonies on planets where it would take us decades to build a sustainable population. As the day progressed, more discoveries emerged. The Korthak individual, working with Rosa Santos, solved an engine efficiency problem that had been puzzling human engineers for months. Zix helped Dr. Chen diagnose a crew member's depression by sensing emotions the man had been hiding. Whisper of Stars guided the ship around a subspace eddy that would have delayed their journey by hours. But the most significant moment came when Lieutenant Parks detected Confederation ships. Approaching, Captain. 3 Confederation cruisers just dropped out of hyperspace behind us. They're demanding we stop and prepare to be boarded. Elena looked around the bridge. Her crew was at their stations, but she could see the tension in their faces. They all knew what this meant. The communication screen lit up with the face of Commander Thex, a crystalline being whose species considered themselves the most pure in the galaxy. His voice carried the authority of someone who had never been questioned. Captain Rodriguez, you will stop your ship immediately and surrender the contaminated beings you illegally removed from their quarantine zone. Elena stepped forward. Commander Thex, I rescued 43 beings from a ship that was dying in space. They are now under the protection of Earth vessel Bridges. You rescued genetic deviants and evolutionary mistakes. These creatures are dangerous to galactic stability. You will surrender them now, or your ship will be declared contaminated and subject to immediate quarantine. Elena felt anger building in her chest, but before she could respond, Zix appeared on the bridge. Their skin was shifting rapidly through colors Elena was beginning to recognize as distress. Captain, please do not sacrifice yourself for us. We are not worth starting a war. Elena looked at the young Zephyrian, then at her crew. Dr. Chen had appeared at the bridge entrance, along with Rosa Santos and several other crew members. They had all seen what she had seen, the incredible abilities and gentle nature of the people they had rescued. Zix, let me tell you something about humans, Elena said loudly, making sure her voice carried over the open communication channel. We have a long history of being told that some people are worth less than others. We've been told that some beings don't deserve the same rights as others, and we've learned that every time we listen to that kind of thinking, we become smaller and uglier as a species. She turned back to the screen where Commander Thex was waiting impatiently. Commander, I've spent the last day with these people. I've seen a Zephyrian help heal emotional wounds through empathy. I've watched a Korthak solve engineering problems by thinking collectively. I've seen a Veil being guided safely through dangerous space. I've observed Narathi children show intelligence and creativity that would make any teacher proud. Elena's voice grew stronger. These people aren't contaminated. They're not genetic mistakes. They're not evolutionary failures. They're beings with incredible abilities who have been condemned because they're different from what your Confederation considers normal. Captain Rodriguez, you are interfering with Confederation's security policy. These beings are classified as dangerous to galactic order. The only thing dangerous here is a policy that decides some lives are worth less than others. Elena made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. Collective Node 7, Whisper of Stars, Broodmother Kess, Zix, all of you, come to the bridge. As the rescued aliens gathered around her, Elena addressed Commander Thex directly. I am formally requesting asylum for these 43 beings under Earth's sovereignty. They are now under human protection. The crystalline commander's form seemed to glow with anger. Captain Rodriguez, your government will disavow your actions. Your career is over. Your ship will be impounded, Elena smiled. You know what, Commander? I don't think it will. See, I think there are a lot of people in this galaxy who are tired of being told that different means dangerous. I think there are a lot of beings who remember what it was like before the Confederation decided to rank every species by how useful they were to the core worlds. She gestured to the aliens around her. These people aren't asking for special treatment. They're asking for the right to exist. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let anyone tell me that's too much to ask. Elena closed Europa Station hung in space like a silver flower, its spinning rings reflecting the distant light of Seoul. As the bridges approached Earth's largest orbital facility, Captain Elena Rodriguez felt nervous for the first time since the rescue. She had gambled everything on humanity's better nature, but what if she was wrong? "Captain?" Lieutenant Parks called from his station. "Europa Station is requesting permission to speak with you directly. Priority 1 communication." Elena straightened her uniform. "Put it through." The main screen filled with the face of Admiral Sarah Chen, Dr. James Chen's older sister and commander of Europa Station. Elena had met her several times at official functions, but had never worked directly under her command. "Captain Rodriguez, I understand you're bringing some unusual passengers to my station." Elena felt her crew holding their breath. "Yes, Admiral. 43 refugees seeking asylum under Earth protection." Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. "James sent me his preliminary reports. Fascinating reading. Permission granted to dock at Base 7. I'll meet you personally at the airlock." Elena blinked in surprise. "Thank you, Admiral. Captain, you should know that your message caused quite a stir in Earth Command. We've been having some very interesting discussions about Confederation policies lately. I think your timing is perfect." 2 hours later, Elena stood at the airlock with her rescued passengers. Zix was staying close to her, their skin a nervous orange color. Collective Node 7 stood with the other Korthak, their echoing voice providing comfort to the group. Whisper of Stars flickered in and out of visibility, while Broodmother Kess held her surviving children close. The airlock cycled open, and Admiral Chen stepped through with a small group of officers. Elena was surprised to see that one of them was Dr. Martinez, Earth's leading expert on alien cultures, and another was Professor Williams from the Xenological Institute. Admiral Chen looked at the group of aliens with curiosity rather than fear. "Welcome to Europa Station. I'm Admiral Chen, and I want you to know that you're safe here." Zix stepped forward, skin shifting to a hopeful blue-green. "Admiral, Captain Rodriguez has been very kind to us, but we know our presence creates problems for your people. We do not wish to cause trouble." Admiral Chen knelt to meet Zix at eye level, just as Elena had done. "Zix, isn't it? Let me tell you something about humans. We've made a lot of mistakes in our history, but one thing we've learned is that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." She gestured to her staff. "Dr. Martinez here has been studying Confederation social policies for 20 years. He's very interested in meeting all of you. Professor Williams runs our cultural exchange programs. They're both excited to learn about your peoples." As the group moved through Europa Station's corridors, Elena was amazed by what she saw. Instead of the military processing facility she had expected, she found herself in what looked more like a university campus. Scientists and researchers hurried between laboratories, while cultural liaison officers prepared comfortable living spaces. "Admiral," Elena said quietly, "how did you arrange all this so quickly?" Sarah Chen smiled. "Captain, this wasn't arranged quickly. We've been preparing for something like this for months." She led them to a large conference room where a presentation was already set up. "Please, everyone sit. I want to show you something." The lights dimmed and a holographic display showed the galaxy divided into the familiar colored zones, but this display had additional data Elena had never seen before. For the past 5 years, Earth has been conducting a secret study of Confederation social policies. Admiral Chen began. "We've been documenting incidents of what we believe constitute systematic oppression and genocide." The display zoomed in on the red zones. The so-called contaminated sectors contain over 200 million sentient beings, species who have been declared genetically inferior or socially dangerous based on criteria that have no scientific basis. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "We found evidence of forced relocations, denial of medical care, economic blockades, and what happened to your ship. Direct attacks on civilian vessels." Whisper of Stars flickered into sharper focus. "You have been studying this, why?" Professor Williams answered. "Because humanity has been through this before. In our own history, we've seen what happens when governments decide that some people are worth less than others. We promised ourselves we would never let it happen again." The display changed to show population graphs and resource allocation charts. Admiral Chen continued. "The Confederation justifies these policies by claiming that inferior species are a drain on galactic resources. But our analysis shows the opposite. The suppressed species often have unique abilities that could benefit everyone." Elena watched as data flowed across the screen. "You've been planning to challenge the Confederation. We've been gathering evidence and looking for the right opportunity, Admiral Chen confirmed. Your rescue provided that opportunity. Collective Node 7 spoke up, their multi-layered voice carrying hope for the first time. You would truly accept us, even knowing the consequences? Admiral Chen stood up. Let me show you something else. The group moved to a large observation window overlooking Europa Station's main habitat ring. Elena gasped at what she saw. The usually sterile corridors were bustling with activity, but not just human activity. She could see beings she recognized as members of supposedly contaminated species working alongside humans. How long has this been happening? Elena asked. 6 months. We've been quietly accepting refugees who made it to human space. Small groups, usually just a few individuals at a time, but word has been spreading. Dr. Martinez pointed to different sections of the habitat ring. The Zephyrian community there has revolutionized our psychological counseling programs. Their empathic abilities allow them to help trauma victims in ways we never thought possible. Professor Williams gestured to another area. That group of Korthak individuals has been working with our computer scientists. Their collective processing abilities have advanced our artificial intelligence research by decades. And the Veil beings, Admiral Chen added, have been helping our navigation teams plot safer routes through dangerous space. Shipping accidents in this sector have dropped by 70%. Broodmother Kess spoke for the first time since boarding the station. Our children could truly be safe here? More than safe, Admiral Chen said gently. Valued, cherished. Your people's ability to rapidly establish populations could help us colonize worlds that have been too dangerous or difficult for human settlement. Elena felt tears in her eyes. You're not just offering sanctuary, you're offering partnership. Exactly. And Captain, you should know that your actions yesterday have already had consequences throughout the galaxy. The display changed again to show communication intercepts and news reports from across Confederation space. Elena saw headlines about the human ship that defied Confederation orders, about species in the contaminated sectors organizing and demanding better treatment, about protests on core worlds. The galaxy is watching, Admiral Chen said. Your rescue has become a symbol. Six's skin was shifting through colors rapidly. This is more than we hoped. But Admiral, the Confederation will not allow this. They will bring their full military power against Earth. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. We know, but we're not alone in this. Our intelligence suggests that several species in the middle tiers of the Confederation hierarchy are questioning the current system. Some of them are secretly supporting reform. She turned to address all the refugees. I won't lie to you. The path ahead will be difficult. There may be fighting. Earth may face economic sanctions or worse. But we believe that standing up for what's right is worth the risk. Elena looked around the room at the faces of the beings she had rescued. Their expressions showed hope mixed with disbelief, as if they couldn't quite believe that someone was finally willing to fight for them. What happens now? Elena asked. Now we prepare, Admiral Chen said. These 43 refugees are just the beginning. Intelligence reports suggest that thousands more are trying to reach human space. We need to be ready to help them. She gestured to the bustling activity visible through the observation window. We're also accelerating our research partnerships. Every breakthrough, every advancement that comes from working with these communities proves that the Confederation's policies aren't just morally wrong, they're strategically stupid. Dr. Martinez stepped forward with a tablet full of data. Captain Rodriguez, we'd like your help. Your ship proved that rescue operations are possible, even under Confederation surveillance. We're organizing what we're calling the Underground Railroad, a network to help more refugees reach safety. Elena felt a surge of purpose. Count me in. Collective Node 7 moved closer to the group. We would like to help as well. Our people have networks throughout the contaminated sectors. We could coordinate communications in safe passages. Whisper of stars flickered into sharp focus. Veil beings can sense safe pathways through subspace. We could guide refugee ships past Confederation patrols. Broodmother Kess looked down at her children, then back up at Admiral Chen. My people are good at surviving in harsh conditions. We could help establish safe colonies on frontier. 6 months after the rescue of the Hope's End survivors, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the bridges watching the most beautiful sight she had ever seen. A convoy of 15 ships was approaching the outer edge of the Sol system. their hulls bearing the scars of long journeys through dangerous space. "Captain," Lieutenant Parks called out, "lead ship is signaling. They're requesting permission to approach Earth." Elena smiled. "Permission granted. And send word to Europa Station. We're bringing them home." The convoy represented the success of what the media had started calling the Underground Railroad. Word had spread through the contaminated sectors that Earth offered sanctuary to anyone fleeing Confederation persecution. At first, only a few ships had attempted the dangerous journey. Now they were arriving in groups. Dr. James Chen, who had become the unofficial coordinator of refugee medical care, joined Elena on the bridge. "How many this time?" 837 beings from 12 different species, Elena replied. "Including some species we've never seen before." The past 6 months had transformed human space. The original 43 refugees had become teachers, researchers, and guides for the growing community of exiles. 6 now ran a therapeutic program that combined Zephyrian empathy with human psychology, helping trauma victims heal faster than anyone had thought possible. Collective Node 7 had established a communication network that connected refugee groups across the galaxy, sharing information about safe routes and Confederation patrol patterns. Their collective thinking abilities, combined with human technology, created an intelligence network the Confederation couldn't crack. Whisper of Stars worked with human navigators to map safe pathways through subspace, allowing refugee ships to avoid detection by traveling through dimensions the Confederation couldn't monitor. And Broodmother Kess had done something remarkable. Her surviving children had grown up on Europa Station, the first generation of Narathi to live in true freedom. They were now adults themselves, working as guides and translators for new refugees. Kess had also established the first Narathi colony on Titan, proving that her people could adapt to any environment if given the chance. But the success had come with costs. "Captain," Parks announced, "priority message from Earth Command." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen, but Elena could see the strain in her expression. "Elena, we need to talk. Private channel." Elena moved to her ready room and accepted the secure connection. "What's wrong, Sarah?" "The Confederation has issued an ultimatum. They're demanding that Earth surrender all refugees within 30 days, or they'll implement what they're calling contamination protocols." Elena felt cold. "What does that mean?" "Complete economic blockade of human space. No trade, no communication, no travel. They're also threatening to declare any ship that helps refugees as enemy vessels." Elena sank into her chair. "How are the other governments responding?" "That's the complicated part. Publicly, most species are supporting the Confederation. But privately," Sarah's expression changed, "we're getting secret communications from governments throughout the galaxy. Species that have been sitting in the middle of the hierarchy are starting to question the system." The Admiral brought up a holographic display showing communication intercepts. "The Altarians sent a secret delegation last week. They want to know if they could establish a research colony in human space. The Kepler Collective has been quietly moving assets out of Confederation banks. Even some of the pure races are having internal debates." Elena leaned forward. "What kind of debates?" "The younger generation, mainly. They've been watching what we're accomplishing here, and they're asking questions their elders don't want to answer." Sarah smiled grimly. "Turns out that when you show people what cooperation looks like instead of oppression, it's hard to go back to the old ways." Elena thought about the convoy of refugees still approaching Earth. "What about our current operations?" "That's why I'm calling. We've received intelligence that the Confederation is planning something called Operation Cleansing. They're going to attack refugee ships directly, claiming they're carrying biological weapons or terrorists." Elena felt anger building in her chest. "They're going to start murdering civilians openly." "It looks that way. Elena, I need you to coordinate with the Underground Railroad. Get word out that refugee movements need to be more careful. We can't save anyone if their ships get destroyed before they reach us." After the call ended, Elena sat alone in her ready room thinking about how much had changed. When she had rescued the survivors of the Hope's End, she had been making a simple moral choice. Save people in danger. But that choice had grown into something much larger. Earth had become the center of a growing resistance movement. Not a military resistance, but something more powerful. A demonstration that the Confederation's basic assumptions about racial hierarchy were wrong. The colonies throughout human space were thriving with their new populations. New Sydney, which had struggled with agriculture on its difficult soil, was now feeding half the sector thanks to Narathi rapid adaptation techniques. The research stations around Jupiter were making breakthrough discoveries. Every month as different species shared their knowledge freely. The Titan colony had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly integrated community where 5 different species worked together as equals. Children from different species played together, learned together, and were growing up seeing diversity as normal and natural. Elena's thoughts were interrupted by an emergency alert from the bridge. She rushed back to find Lieutenant Parks coordinating with multiple incoming signals. "Captain, we're receiving distress calls from 3 different refugee convoys. They're all reporting attacks by Confederation forces." Elena looked at the tactical display. Red icons showed Confederation ships moving throughout the space between human territory and the contaminated sectors. They're not waiting for their ultimatum to expire. They're starting Operation Cleansing now. Dr. Chen joined them on the bridge. "How many ships are under attack?" "Looks like coordinated strikes on 6 convoys," Parks reported. "Total refugee count approximately 4,000 beings." Elena made a decision that she knew would escalate everything. "Signal all available human ships in the area. We're mounting rescue operations." "Captain," Dr. Chen said quietly, "that's an act of war." Elena looked at him steadily. "James, they're murdering civilians, children, families who just want to live in peace. If stopping that is an act of war, then I guess we're at war." She turned to Parks. "Send a message to Admiral Chen. Tell her we're implementing Emergency Protocol 7. Parks looked confused. "Captain, there is no Emergency Protocol 7. Elena smiled grimly. "There is now. It means we stop asking permission and start saving lives." The next few hours were chaotic. Human ships throughout the sector moved to intercept the refugee convoys under attack. The bridges led a task force toward the largest group of refugees, who were trapped between 2 Confederation cruisers. But as they approached the battle zone, Elena received a message that changed everything. "Human vessels. This is Captain Vex of the Altarian ship Star's Promise. We are moving to assist the refugees." Elena stared at the communication display. "An Altarian ship? They're supposed to be neutral." More signals came in. A Kepler collective science vessel was approaching another refugee convoy. 3 ships from the Tau-Cedian Federation were moving to block Confederation forces from reaching a group of Narathi families. Dr. Chen looked at Elena with amazement. "It's happening. Other species are joining us." The battle that followed would later be called the Turning Point. Human ships, supported by vessels from a dozen other species, engaged Confederation forces throughout the sector. But this wasn't a traditional military conflict. The Allied ships focused entirely on protecting the refugees while avoiding unnecessary combat. When Confederation forces fired on civilian ships, the Allies defended them. When Confederation commanders demanded surrender, the Allies ignored them. When Confederation propaganda claimed the refugees were dangerous, the Allies broadcast live footage of families just trying to reach safety. The most powerful moment came when Zix, broadcasting from Europa Station, used their empathic abilities to project the emotions of refugee children directly to communication networks across the galaxy. Beings throughout Confederation space suddenly felt the fear, hope, and innocent trust of children who had done nothing wrong except be born into the wrong species. The public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Protests began on dozens of worlds. Communication networks crashed under the volume of messages demanding explanations from governments. Several Confederation members announced they were suspending their participation in military operations. Elena watched the tactical display as Confederation forces began withdrawing from the battle zone. "They're retreating." "More than that," Dr. Chen said, monitoring communication intercepts. "We're getting reports of mass resignations in the Confederation military. Entire units are refusing orders." Elena felt a moment of hope, but she knew this was just the beginning. "Park, signal the fleet. All refugee convoys are to continue to human space under full protection. Any Confederation forces that interfere will be treated as hostile." As the convoy of refugee ships continued toward Earth, now escorted by vessels from multiple species, Elena realized the emergency session of the Galactic Confederation High Council was unlike anything in their 1,000-year history. High Counselor Thex, the crystalline being who had tried to stop Captain Rodriguez 9 months earlier, stood before representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species. But for the first time, his authority was being openly questioned. "The situation is clear," Thex announced, his crystal form glowing with anger. "The humans and their contaminated allies have declared war on galactic order. They must be stopped before their madness spreads further." But Counselor Vex of the Altarian stood up. "High Counselor, my people have been monitoring the human settlements. We see no evidence of the chaos and degradation you predicted. Instead, we observe remarkable cooperation and advancement." Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. For a species to openly challenge the High Council was unprecedented. Thex's glow intensified. "The contamination has already begun to affect your judgment. This is exactly why these policies exist. Or perhaps," said Counselor Mira of the Kepler Collective, "our judgment is clearer than it has been in centuries." Meanwhile, on Europa Station, Admiral Sarah Chen was addressing the largest gathering in human history. Representatives from Earth and every human colony were present, along with delegates from the growing refugee communities and ambassadors from the species that had joined the resistance. "The Confederation has given us a final ultimatum," Admiral Chen announced. "Surrender all refugees and accept punishment for our contamination, or face complete military destruction." The chamber was silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The Confederation had the largest military force in galactic history. Earth's defenses, while advanced, were not designed for a war of this scale. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood up from the audience. "Admiral, permission to speak." "Granted, Captain." Elena walked to the front of the chamber, looking out at the faces of beings from dozens of different species. 9 months ago, I made a choice to save 43 people who were dying in space. I didn't think about politics or consequences. I just knew it was the right thing to do." She gestured to Zix, who was sitting in the front row, their skin a steady, calm blue. "Since then, I've watched those 43 people help save thousands more. I've seen their children grow up in freedom for the first time in their species' memory. I've watched human and alien scientists make discoveries together that neither could have achieved alone." Elena's voice grew stronger, but most importantly, I've learned something about what it means to be human. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the smartest or the most advanced. But we have something that matters more than any of that. "What's that, Captain?" asked Admiral Chen. "We remember what it feels like to be considered less than others, and we refuse to let that happen to anyone else." The chamber erupted in applause, but Elena held up her hand for silence. "However, I want everyone here to understand what we're choosing. The Confederation isn't bluffing. They will bring everything they have against us. Many of us may not survive what's coming." Collective Node 7 stood up, their echoing voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Captain Rodriguez, our people have lived under Confederation oppression for 200 years. We know what survival without hope looks like. We choose to risk death for the chance of freedom." Whisper of stars flickered into sharp focus beside them. "Veil beings have existed partially in other dimensions for millennia. We have seen possible futures. The path of submission leads only to darkness. The path of resistance leads to light, even if that path is dangerous." Broodmother Kess spoke next, her voice filled with the authority of someone who had lost children to Confederation violence. "My species learns quickly because we must. We have learned that some things are worth dying for. Our children's future is one of those things." Elena looked around the chamber. "Then let's take a vote. All in favor of rejecting the Confederation ultimatum and standing together, regardless of the consequences." The vote was unanimous. Admiral Chen stood up. "Then it's decided. Earth formally withdraws from the Galactic Confederation and declares the establishment of the Free Alliance, a coalition of species committed to equality and cooperation." 3 days later, the largest space battle in galactic history began. The Confederation fleet was massive, over 3,000 ships representing the combined military might of 50 species. They approached the Sol system in perfect formation, confident that this show of force would end the rebellion quickly. But as they reached the outer edge of the system, they found something they hadn't expected. The human defense fleet was small by comparison, only 800 ships. But they weren't alone. Vessels from over 30 species had joined them, including ships from several species that were supposed to be loyal Confederation members. The battle began when Confederation forces demanded immediate surrender. Admiral Chen's response was broadcast throughout the galaxy. To all beings listening, we do not fight for conquest or domination. We fight for the simple principle that all sentient life has value. We fight because we believe diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. We fight because we refuse to accept that some beings are worth less than others. The fighting that followed was unlike any previous space battle. The Free Alliance ships used tactics that had never been seen before. Korthak collective thinking coordinated fleet movements with perfect precision. Zephyrian emotional sensing detected Confederation ambushes before they developed. Veil beings guided ships through subspace to appear behind enemy lines. And Narathi rapid adaptation techniques allowed damaged ships to be repaired, faster than anyone thought possible. But the most powerful weapon the Free Alliance had was something the Confederation couldn't: counter moral authority. As the battle raged, communication networks throughout the galaxy broadcast live footage of the fighting. Citizens on Confederation worlds watched their government's ships attacking refugee vessels and civilian settlements. They saw Free Alliance forces protecting non-combatants while Confederation forces targeted them. The turning point came when Captain Rodriguez, leading a group of ships protecting a civilian evacuation, received an unexpected message. Human vessels. This is Admiral Kex of the Confederation 4th Fleet. We are standing down. Elena stared at her communications display. Admiral, please repeat that. Captain Rodriguez, my fleet is withdrawing from combat. We will not fire on civilians, and we will not enforce policies we believe are morally wrong. Within hours, similar messages came from Confederation units throughout the battle zone. Entire fleets were refusing orders. Some ships switched sides entirely, joining the Free Alliance forces in protecting refugee settlements. High Counselor Thex, commanding the battle from his flagship, watched his forces disintegrate. Species that had followed Confederation leadership for centuries were openly rebelling. Even some of the pure races were questioning their loyalty. The final blow came when the Eternal Hierarchy, the oldest and most prestigious species in the Confederation, sent their own message to all beings of the galaxy. We have watched this conflict with growing concern. The principles for which the Free Alliance fights, equality, cooperation, and respect for all sentient life, are principles we can no longer ignore. The Eternal Hierarchy formally recognizes the legitimacy of the Free Alliance and calls for immediate peace negotiations. The Battle of Sol ended not with military victory, but with moral transformation. 5 years later, Captain Elena Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez, stood before the newly constructed Galactic Compact Assembly. The old Confederation had collapsed, replaced by a democratic government where representation was based on population and contribution, not perceived genetic superiority. The former contaminated sectors had been transformed into thriving communities. Zix, now Director of Interspecies Psychological Services, had helped thousands of beings recover from trauma and discrimination. Collective Node 7 had established the Galactic Communication Network, allowing instant coordination between species across the galaxy. Whisper of Stars had become the head of the new Navigation Guild, using Veil abilities to make space travel safer for everyone. And Broodmother Kess's children now lived on dozens of worlds, their rapid adaptation abilities helping establish colonies and environments that had been considered impossible to settle. But, perhaps the most important, change was simpler than any of those achievements. Elena looked out at the assembly chamber, where beings from hundreds of species worked together as equals. Young people from different species played together in the station's gardens. Families that included members from multiple species were becoming common. Earth, Elena announced to the assembly, formally accepts the title of Sanctuary World, the place where those rejected by others will always find acceptance. She paused, looking at the faces of beings who represented every corner of the galaxy. But more than that, we celebrate the transformation of our entire galaxy into a place where diversity is valued, where cooperation is chosen over domination, and where the worth of a being is measured by their character, not their species. The applause that followed came from beings using dozens of different methods of showing approval.